Thanks for coming today, and thanks to RubyConf for allowing me to talk about a game. That's pretty sweet. I have to talk a little bit about the title. I don't know what it is with me, but I constantly put nonsense in my titles. When I wrote this in, I had no idea what modman was. And as far as I know, it still is a made-up word by me, and I'm going with that. I don't know if I was thinking about the Motor City Madman or I typed Madman first. I mostly just wanted to put some crazy-ass picture of Ted Nugent on the screen. But I did come up with the definition, and it's strange how perfect it is. A modman is someone who spends more time modding their game than they do actually playing it. And so my goal today is to teach you how to modify Minecraft and turn you into modmen and modmin with a Y for the ladies. So what the hell is Minecraft? Can I get a show of hands of how many people who know what Minecraft is? Oh, wow. It's like 80%. And how many people have played Minecraft? It's like, sweet, Ted's in the house. So that's about a 5% difference, and all I can say to that 5% is you don't really know Minecraft until you play it. I just wanted to talk about the background of the game because I think it's a pretty fascinating story if you don't already know it. The game was written by Notch about 2 years ago, and ever since this game became popular, he's a complete rock star. Like, I read one story where some Hollywood elite went and flew him in on a private jet to London so he could party that night, and then they flew him back in the morning so he could continue working on Minecraft. It's pretty cool. And even more amazing, he's a rock star and he wrote this game in Java. And the graphics might be a little giveaway that's written in Java. Coincidentally, since I'm knocking things, this is approximately the 10th game that's ever been written for Mac OS. Actually, he was inspired by a different game, Infiniminer. This game is similar in the sense that you can break down blocks, collect them, and then build them back up again. But the goal of the game was to have some, like, 5-on-5 capture the flag sort of game where people work together collectively. And that didn't take off so well, and they canceled it. And then he started Minecraft like 2 weeks after that. So once he started making Minecraft, he just set up a site and put it on the net. He had an applet in the browser window. Actually, it's still there if you want to play it. It's kind of a crappy version of the game. And then you could actually go and purchase the game and play it. Now, what was really sweet about this as an idea is once people actually bought the game, every 2-3 weeks, he'd go and put out a new version. And so people would go and join the forums after the new version came out and said, oh, that's really sweet, or please don't make torches wear out. And he got this nice, tight feedback loop, and it ended up generating a really excellent game. And step 3 of any 3 steps is always profit, right? He started out as one programmer. Now he has a company, Mojang, with 15 employees, and they've sold 3.6 million copies to date at 15 euros a piece. That's truly inspirational. So I always try to describe what this game is, and it's very, very difficult. I think everyone who's played it has a hard time. You're like, oh, you can dig around and you can build stuff, but there isn't actually a defined goal in the game, so people just don't get it. And I thought I was going to make this like completely awesome video to explain what Minecraft is, but I've come to the conclusion that you still have to try it to actually understand what Minecraft is. And so my hat's off to people who do screencasts a lot because I think it's very difficult. So you can dig. You can make items. I'm going to make some sticks. And then I'm going to go and make a pickaxe so I can dig. work the crops. You can do real life work. You know, nothing's funner than playing a game where you do work. You can dig. You can dig. I found this really sweet cave and I just threw it in here. There's another reason for showing this example. It points out that I'm not a particularly good Minecraft player. You can fight monsters. In 1.8, they added abandoned mines and ruins. I'm not a good player. You can build pyramids and put trees in them, make little tunnels. Awesome. I think you could see that I actually started that fire. That was flint and steel. You can light yourself on fire. I'm not a very good player. This is actually a modman plugin, or a Purugin plugin, teleporting. All right. So that didn't really capture the essence of why Minecraft is fun. I think this picture does a much better job. What happens when you start playing Minecraft, you make this decision. I'm going to make a tree house. And then you build a tree house, and it's like 2 by 3 by 3, and there's like a little tree next to it. And then you look at it, and you're like, wow, that's not big enough. I'm going to make a really big fucking tree house. And then you spend like 2 weeks, and you have an awesome tree house. Then you kind of sit back and go, God, I just spent 2 weeks making a really big fucking tree house. But this is much, much better than having a different idea. This guy had that same thought. I'm going to make a really big fucking Yoda. And it didn't, well, wait. I'm a little concerned. There's 3.6 million players, and I thought, God, what are the odds that they're in the audience? It's actually quite cool. All right. So there's a few things you can do without actually modifying the game itself, a few customizations that you're allowed to do. When you start out the game, this is what you look like in the game. This skin actually has a name, Steve. He's just a little grubby little bastard. You should not use the default skin. It takes almost no time at all to make Indian Thriller. This is actually my skin, and it's awesome. It's probably the best skin I've ever seen. But if you do want to make a skin, you can go to a site like Miners with Shoes, and this is a nice JavaScript-based editor. The guy on the right, you can just kind of drag him around, and on the left, you just interactively design your skin. This is actually a really famous Minecraft player. What is his name? Honeydew from Yogscast, and you can see his taint. Okay, so when you first start playing the game, it looks like the left, and on the right is a custom texture pack. You can download and set up texture packs when you first start playing. I have a personal pet peeve with the default texture pack. In particular, it's wheat. If you ask me, that's asparagus and not wheat. But beyond that, it actually has a playing problem, is I can never tell the difference between almost grown wheat and harvestable wheat. And it drives me insane because I'll knock it down before it's ready and I just have to start over again. Beyond doing something useful like that, you can actually make the game look a lot prettier. And I recommend you go to painterlypack.net. What this site is it has a bunch of predefined textures that you can just download, but it has this super, super, super huge web form that you can fill out where you can customize literally every aspect of the game. Like what we can see here in this form is like 30 different tops of just your forge. So you can pick how you want that to look. When you get down to the bottom of the screen, you click submit and it gives you a zip file that you can then just copy into your Minecraft textures directory. So pretty cool. And And so now we're going to talk about Purugin. I should point out that when I originally tried to create this project, I wanted it to be Purugin in katakana, and I actually tried to submit that as a repository on github.com. You can't do it. You just get a bunch of question marks, so I had to go to Ramanji. And Purugin is just a Ruby API for creating server-side plugins. In fact, it's built on top of a Java API called Bucket. So if we look at our little architectural diagram here, normally when you play Minecraft, you start up one Java process for your client, and then when you decide you want to have a multiplayer server, you'll download minecraftserver.jar and start it up, and then you can connect to it. In the Purugin Craft Bucket world, you'll download something called Craft Bucket, which knows how to go and start up minecraftserver.jar, but it does so much more. It creates a common API with very nice names. If you actually looked at the Java classes that are in Minecraft.server, the world class get player name will be the class capital A dot method name A. So it's impossible to read. And so Craft Bucket's this attempt to have this stable layer where all these APIs are consistent. On top of actually providing a consistent API, they have an additional API for creating plugins so that you can actually modify the behavior of the game. So when you start up Craft Bucket, it starts up Minecraft server and then loads all the plugins in the plugins directory. Now the plugins that are written in Java are just jar files. But one very, very special plugin is Purugin, which is a Bucket plugin that also allows you to load any .rb files as if they were Bucket plugins. And in fact, they are Bucket plugins. I was told that, excuse me. I was told that Purugin was a little difficult to install, so last week I made an installer. So to get started, clone the repository, and then run bin install with any Ruby 1.9 implementation. And then what this will do is get a sensible set of defaults that I've decided are stable enough for release and put it into a Minecraft directory parallel to the Purugin directory. Like I said, I only made this a week ago, so please back up your server. If I destroy your world because you just blindly try this, I'll feel bad and you'll be stupid. So the bits you get a stable Purugin.jar. If you want to actually do your own development, you have to copy that yourself, but you can just write over it. You get JRuby complete. This is essentially JRuby with all the standard libraries crammed into one jar file. You don't have to install JRuby if you don't want to. It's optional. Please install JRuby. You get Craft Bucket, which allows you to manage your worlds, has its stable API, loads plugins, blah, blah, blah. Permissions Bucket, which is really confusing to me, it's the officially endorsed permissions plugin. Why is the implementation of permissions a plugin? Like, shouldn't that be part of the actual base? I don't get it. But it allows you to define groups and users, and then you get a /permissions command where you can define those things. I'll give you a shortcut a little bit later. I threw DynMap in here for no other reason than it's just cool. It starts up a small web server on your Minecraft server that allows you to see maps of your world. There's 3 views, just kind of a flat, like straight down look. The topological view that you can see here. And then this really weird view where you can see all the tunnels in your world. It's not like super awesome, but you get an idea where the big holes are. By the time you're done actually running the installer, you'll have a directory layout that looks approximately like this. And then you can just run the run script. This will fire off Craft Bucket, which will start up Minecraft server, and then it'll load all your plugins. When you actually do have a plugin or a Purugin, so can anyone understand I say plugin and Purugin? It's probably a really bad name choice. When you actually copy in your Purugin, you'll have to restart the server. This is something that I want to change because if you go and install a new plugin, there should just be a simple listener that loads it. But this actually is a good segue into plugin lifecycle. When CraftBucket starts up, it loads every plugin and calls on load on each one. And then it gets to the second phase of loading where it starts calling on enable. The reason why it actually has these two phases is because plugins can have dependencies on each other. So you want to be able to guarantee that any plugin you might use has already been reachable. There's also an on-disable method that you can go and implement so that if you have an open database connection or stale data, you can flush that out and shut it down when the server is shutting down. There's no on-unload. And I think this kind of blows a little bit, but what can you do? There's several Java technologies that allow Java classes to get unloaded, so there was no reason that they couldn't have added this, but they didn't. One of the other things I would like to do is make all plugins dynamically reload, similar to like Rails in development mode. And I know it's possible, but I ran out of time. So we finally get to see our first plugin. This really is sort of a hello world. Anytime a player joins the world, it will go and tell every player in the world that you joined or you quit. And this is the entirety of the plugin. Normally when you actually write a Java-based plugin, it'll usually be three Java files, and then you have to have this big-ass directory structure. And this is just one file. So if we look at the top of the class, you'll notice that this is just an ordinary Ruby class. The only thing that actually makes it a plugin is that you can actually include the plugin module to tell it. Yeah. Okay. And once you actually specify that it is that, there are some metadata methods that you can provide. One of which you have to provide is description, which gives it its real live name in the game, the thing that you see on the console, and the way that you can access it from other plugins. And you can also provide a version number. Now, typically when you go and make a plugin, you're generally only going to make an on-enable method. And you're going to do essentially two things. You're going to register events to do interesting things when an event happens, like player join or player quit. But there's many events, and these numbers seem to keep growing. Every one of these events typically will have their own unique state object for when the event happens. So I'm trying to impress upon you early that the Bucket plugin the Bucket plugin API is quite huge. And so Purugin has the job of layering over all this stuff. The second major thing you do when you go and make a plugin is you register commands. Commands are things that when you go into the chat system, you can do /die. Remember earlier I said I wasn't a very good player. One thing I didn't, I still don't even know why I did it. I know I wasn't digging for China. I'd get a pickaxe and a set of torches, and I would just start digging straight down. I don't really know why I did it, but every single result was always the same. I was in a deep, dark hole with no way out. And, you know, by the time I actually made this plugin, I didn't need the tool anymore, but I figured it might be a good thing for people to have. If we read across this is a command that only a player can execute versus the console, because the console can't kill itself. It's /die. The description is end it all. And the usage string is the third parameter, which can be omitted if there's no arguments, but I wanted to show this in the first example. Now to the block, the first argument's the sender, which in this case, since it's a player command, is going to be a player instance. And then your argument list. Since there's no arguments, I use the cornhole operator. We'll let that sink in more. Okay, there's actually 5 commands available, 5 different forms. The first 2 are for ones where you absolutely don't want to do permission checking ever. And the second set are when you want to do permissions checking. If something can only get executed by the console, you'll make a console command. Pretty obvious, right? When you actually want to do permissions, there actually is an optional default parameter where you can specify the name of your permission. A permission is just a string key value, and that key value gets looked up in permissions bucket. The default form is all you should ever need because it's based on the Purugin name dot the command. And every other plugin I've ever seen uses this same form, so don't use it. So when I type /die, it ends up looking in the config file, realizes I'm in an admin group, and then sees I can die. I can die, hooray! But this basically is how all commands get resolved. I said I would give a shortcut. Once you actually set up your first group, just edit this file, because we all know how to edit YAML, right? It's way faster. It's totally obvious, but I still have to point it out, because you'll get carpal tunnel the other way. Arguments are a little bittersweet in the Bucket API. Craft Bucket will actually split up your command line based on a heuristic of spaces and commas, and then give you a list of arguments. But if you're making like a message of the day plugin, well, that kind of sucks because you lose all the spaces and commas. They actually promise that they'll fix this in a later version or add another form, but we're stuck with it for now. But basically, you just get a Ruby array, and you can deal with it as you want. They're always going to be strings. I added a error convenience method. What this does is the first argument, you pass in an expression. So long as it's not nil or false, it just returns that expression. But if it is nil or false, then it takes the second argument and prints that in red to your screen. And similarly, I did the same thing with a board. It also will go and show you a usage string for the command. Speaking of colors, if you actually want to go and send messages with color in it, you can just include Purugin colors. You'll get all the methods that are below the snippet, and then you'll also get a colorize method where you can go and put colors between curly brackets, and it'll just do that interpolation for you. Configuration, every time you install a plugin, it creates a temporary data directory for you in the plugins directory for that plugin, and it'll create a config.yaml file for you. If you call the config method, it'll load that file for you, and you'll have a live copy. And then you can do things like get values and set values. That second argument for that get bang method just says if there's no value, just assume it's the welcome string. The bangs themselves are something that I added. They represent a side effect. If it has a bang on it, by the time the method's done, it will have flushed and committed to the config.yaml file. If you don't want to do that, then don't use the non-bang versions. There's also some type coercing gets so that you can get a fixed num back. This actually mostly follows Bucket's API, except I changed some of the names to match Ruby types. Get int is get fixed num. I guess it could have been get integer, but that doesn't make sense to me. The entire world's made out of blocks, so it makes sense that you need to have APIs to go and get blocks. There's actually not that many methods necessary to interact with the world. The first and probably the most common is target block. If I get the target block for me, it's going to be what I actually have targeted. Wow, you can barely see that outline. And then the next thing that you might want to do is get a block relative to a block you already have. So you can say, I want the block up one from where I'm currently at. Then that would give you air. And then you'll have that block. I should point out, I'll show you a demo in a second, never mind. Once you get this block path, you can go and pass it into a method that expects a block or a location. I started adding to loc coercion the spawn mob method on world actually wants a location, so it calls toLoc if it can respond to it. And I created this plugin to, yes. You know, if you have to make a movie, it's very difficult to set up real-life scenarios without faking it. So you can type /spawn creeper, and then I add a time amount, so you could say in 10 seconds, and then I can be ready for action, and then turn on my screen capture software. It's awesome. There's a few more power arguments to these methods. Target block by default ignores air, so it's not technically what gets highlighted on your screen. It's anything that you're looking at that's not air, but you could put in a whole list of things. So if I specified I wanted to ignore air and sand and pointed down in that previous example, it would probably target a sandstone block underneath there. So it's very useful, and then you can curb how far you look. And block at, you can also say I want to get 3 blocks up. Pretty simple. And then the last method you'll actually want to do for getting a block is just to get it off an absolute location. This is my bouncer example. What happens is when the player moves, well, anytime a player moves, it generates a player move event, and you get 2 pieces of information in this. One is from where you started to where you finished by the time the move completed. So I have a location. I can ask the world to give me the block at that location. If we look at that snippet, then I want the block below me because I'm on top of a block. But then once I have the block, the way this particular plugin works, as soon as I start walking on stone, I start collectively bouncing higher and higher. And so long as I'm still touching stone or I'm in the air, I want to continue bouncing, but as soon as I hit something else, I want to stop. And I can check that with the is ? Identity method. Now, the other insane thing about Minecraft is every single release definitely adds new blocks. And this might change by 11.11.11 when Minecraft is fully released and out of official beta. But we'll see. I'm kind of hoping it doesn't. That whole tight feedback loop, you just keep getting weirder and weirder stuff in the game. And so here's Bouncer. Later on, I'll show you how to make a world like this. I'm collectively bouncing higher. Oh, this is awesome. And you could conceive of making your own sub-game inside of Minecraft by doing this. Another thing that I can't quite figure out in Minecraft modding, is the fact that whenever people change stuff in the game, they'll literally just change the type. They don't instantiate a new object and replace it. They just it went from rock to air. It's kind of like, it violates some real-world principle in my head. Here's an example of a generator I made. It generates a maze on the ground. I actually took it from this ancient CRT game that I used to play called Hack. Has anyone ever played Hack? Yes. It's a great game. But here I'm changing the type of whatever's in the way to whatever type I specified I wanted to make the maze out of. And here I am running it. God, why do pigs always fall in holes? I should have probably made it like 1 higher so you'd actually have to go through it. But you get the idea. Like I said, you can actually have plugin dependencies. Here's 2 other example plugins that I have. The top one is Locs Plus, which allows you to go and find out your current location, set waypoints, track to waypoints. And the second plugin is the teleporter one that we saw at the end of that first video, where you can right-click on a sign. Now the sign's actually implemented by looking up particular locations for a player that they've saved. So any location that you've saved as a waypoint, you can put on that sign, and then when you place the sign, it'll replace it with its actual location, and you can port there. But Ports plugin doesn't work without Logs Plus, so this is another one of these metadata methods where Ports plugin will not actually start if Logs plugin isn't installed. There's also an optional one that'll give you the ability to go and access another plugin easily. There's an options hash at the end of this. Include coordinate encoding. This will just do a module include right before on enable. The reason why I did it this way, because you certainly could have just did include in Ruby and did include space logs plus coordinate encoding, but that violated my sense of aesthetics, because isn't it nice at the top to know all your dependencies in a declarative fashion? The one thing I'm not so in love with, if you want to get a live reference to another plugin, you just give it its name as a method, and then you get the live reference. It's a little cringeworthy to me, but it does seem to work fine. Inevitably, you'll want to go and use Ruby gems to make a more sophisticated plugin. The installer creates a gems directory for you. The run script actually will reference that gems directory. This is very, very important. You will have to install JRuby if you want to install any gems, because if there's any native C extensions, then if you install with MRI, you'll be completely hosed. It won't work. Also, there's sometimes -Java equivalent versions of gems that will automatically install for you, and you won't get those, and things won't work. So please install JRuby. And this works like any other Ruby code. You require a gem and you use it, right? The one other thing to point out is I use colorize, so anything Notch says is green, and his text is in white, and it prints the last 5 tweets. I thought this was the most useless Twitter client ever, because it only follows a single user, and it only gives you 5 tweets. But then I was talking to someone, and they're like, no, it's really awesome to see what Notch is saying. And I'm like, just tab out, man. Okay, so a few dirty secrets. I've only implemented as much of the Bucket API that was useful to me. I can do a lot of things. I can do pretty much anything that I wanted. But Bucket's a huge, huge API. So I'm looking for people to contribute to this. Please think about expanding the Bucket API. But before you decide to do that, you should also be aware that virtually every live object that is in Purugin is actually a Java object and not a Ruby object. So that might rankle a few people, but and it might also confuse a few people, because one of the things we do in JRuby is when you load a Java class, we create lots of shortcuts for you to make them feel like a Ruby class. So world.getPlayer, that's a getter. So we call world.player. And it works great, but there's no RDoc to tell you this, and there's no JavaDoc to tell you this. So you have to learn a few basic rules to be able to kind of follow this. Although we don't do very many shortcuts, so it really is pretty easy. But it might be a little confusing at first. The second reason why maybe not everything feels like a Java object, even though it is that we adorn Java classes with whatever custom Ruby methods we want, and we can get away from having to call Java methods directly. Although those Java methods are still there and usable, which is actually kind of a cool secondary benefit, because even though I didn't fully implement Bucket, large portions of Bucket will work fine if you look at the Java docs and just call the methods with the shortcut versions. And oftentimes, those will be what you want for the Ruby API anyways. The places where you actually want to go and change the Ruby API is when you want to actually create a nice block-based API. Geez, I shouldn't say block-based API in a Minecraft talk. The closure-based API. But I promise you two things. One, you will be looking at bucket Java docs when you start getting into it, and it's unavoidable until I get more comprehensive examples. And I have a whole bunch of documentation I wrote, and I was going to have it published before I did, but I didn't do it in Markdown, so I should have just pasted it all in there anyways. That's what Git's good for. I can just recommit a new version, but I didn't do it, so. But you will end up reading Java doc. I can almost guarantee it. And you might occasionally see a Java stack trace. I think that's okay. So some things that I would really like to fix pretty soon. For sure, if you copy a new plugin or Purugin into the plugins directory, it should automatically load. That's trivial to do. I just ran out of time. And I want to be able to do live reloading of existing plugins, assuming there's no like scary dependency. And it should work as well as development mode in Rails does. I want to flesh out the APIs more, and I want someone else to flesh out the APIs more. And once the game's actually released, I want to start playing with Spout. Spout's truly insane. So all the stuff I've talked about now is just server-side plugins. You can change the behavior at the server level, but with Spout, you can add new object types that display on the screen differently, like my girlfriend wants to go and make stained glass. Like, how sweet would that be? You can add new windows. You can change how the UI interacts. I hate the fact that I have to type T every time I want to chat or type in a command. I can probably change that to the return key. But client-side mods are pretty dangerous because in order to support the client-side mod, you have to create a new type. If you create a new type, you have to store it somewhere in your world. If you store it somewhere in your world, and then Notch releases a new version of Minecraft, and he happens to use the same value that you're using, things might explode. So I'm waiting for the full 1.0, or I mean, what version it's going to be? It's like 1.8.1 right now. It's going to be 1.9. So is 1.0 or the official non-beta version going to be Minecraft 2? I don't know. I'm willing to provide shirts if anyone sends a pull request to write these plugins. The first one's to go and make a tunnel, let's say 3 high and 2 wide, with torches like every 4 or 5 down on each side. Another one, I really wanted to do this for the talk. I wanted to make image wall. So you basically say image wall, and you give it a URL for an image. It downloads that image and converts it to a 14 color image, and then lays it out on the floor or up as a wall as wool blocks. That would be really, really awesome. And send pull requests. If it's super cool, you might get a t-shirt anyways if it's something else. If you make these and they're kind of crappy, you might still get a t-shirt. So when I was working on this talk last, whenever time's kind of blurring, I started to have some beers. It was kind of the end of the night. I had Lake Erie Monster, which is a pretty good Imperial IPA if you ask me. Had some Avery Karma. It started to warm me up to the idea that I should probably have like one demo to kind of like bring things out. Then I remembered I have a 4-core, 3.2 gigahertz, 12 gig desktop machine, and I thought I would make one last demo. By the way, I whitelisted my server. I did not make these pigs. This is like a bizarre number of pigs. And I left this in the full drunken glory, like I am not typing too fast. So I'm making a cube of 10 by 10 by 10 of TNT. Ooh, I'm not an angry drunk, am I? And this was a total fail here. I should have made my flint and steel beforehand, because now you get to see really how slow I'm typing by this point in the night. There we go. Oh, yeah, here we go. It's pretty big. That TNT was so powerful it blew a hole in Java. Actually, I think he uses UDP for the connection protocol, and I think there were just so many packet updates that it just kind of swamped out and then dumped me. Yeah. Happy modding. Thank you.